Hello and welcome to the TVS London. Today we are just going to do a breaking news, and that just recently, about an hour's time, ECB has come up with the latest guideline about how you can come out and do your training and what you can do outdoor in terms of playing cricket. So that we'll be talking a little bit about it. The documentation is there; it's explained everything. But we thought it would be good to have a discussion with the specialist people who will know about it a little bit more than normally the cricketers and the grassroots people know. So to discuss with this with me, joining Dan Feast, head of cricket operations, Essex Cricket. So that Dan will be joining me. Dan, welcome to the show. Just talk through about the guideline, Dan.
Yeah, good afternoon, Ratan, and welcome to the audience and everyone. This again is a good news story, really, isn't it? It gives us that chance of seeing that we're starting to see that move from into the chance that we can actually start to really progress where cricket is. But the guidelines have opened up now in line with government guidelines around small group activation of 6 people, and it gives us a stepping stone towards hopefully a return to play later in the summer. The key bit around this is not about matches or games being played. This is just about how you can activate small groups of 6 people, staying in with government guidelines around social distancing, but now it gives you the chance to have small groups activating and going through. So which is really good news. A key bit in the guidelines is that people still need to make sure they do their risk mitigation and risk assessments around it in terms of sharing equipment, which we still recommend is not done. But also the chance now that actually how you can manage a net environment with a group, maybe 5 players and a coach, or a small group activation of maybe 5 players and a coach as well. You can now have a couple of groups taking place as well, but as long as social distancing is taken away. So again, that stops the opportunity for matches and games, which is hopefully the next stage. So that bit's still suspended. What's available now is you can have 6 people 2 meters apart, taking part in maybe like a middle practice, a single wicket activity, or within a net environment having 2 or 3 bowlers now bowling. But you must still take care and make sure we follow the government guidelines and look at all of the sort of risk assessments that need to be put in place to make sure we're managing this situation. Remembering that for a large part of our area, East London, it has been the hardest hit and has a large number of people have been affected by this pandemic and still being affected by this pandemic. And we need to make sure we take all caution as well, which is great news in terms of now being able to take a next step towards, hopefully, and we understand that next week there'll be a roadmap produced by the ECB that will show us what their steps are to get us back up to potentially full playing if we can carry on managing this process and showing us again, which we have done, that we can collectively work together alongside the government to take sensible steps into reactivating the game of cricket.
Yeah, then just in this point, I just wanted to bring back Jawa Ali. Jawa, join us. Jawa, welcome to the show, Jawa. Jawa, can you hear me?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. I can.
Yeah,
yes.
Jawa, can you hear me clearly? All right, Jawa. It's a good news.
Yes.
There is a latest guideline. Hopefully, you have read a little bit, and Dan was explaining about what is mean by the organization like you that manage a ground and the people are coming. What this news mean to you?
I think it's a great opportunity to give the cricket fans who have been waiting all season to get out there and train with their mates. It's a great opportunity to do some practice out in the ground, doing some fielding drills, doing some nets, some centre practice. So I think it's a step in the right direction. It's gonna ease some of the tensions that we've had where people are just bubbling up thinking, why is cricket not being played in other sports like golf and bowls are allowed to take place. So I think it's some relief. But as Dan mentioned, we had some government guidelines and some research that recently indicated BAME communities have a high chance of contracting the disease. So we need to make sure whatever we do is done responsibly, carefully, and in a safe way. So I think it's really important that we follow the public health guidelines. If we do have training sessions at the grounds, we need to ensure safety comes first. So that's something that we're going to be ensuring. We're trying to set up a online booking system to make sure we don't have overlap. We're going to have a cleaning process in between using the stumps and some of the equipment that's shared. We're not opening up our toilets yet or changing rooms. It's just something that we can't manage at the moment. So I think every club needs to make an assessment of what they think they can do and can't do. But I think it's a good news story. The fact that people can train together, it's exciting times.
Yeah. So if Dan, if I can come back to you, you mentioned about the risk assessment for the club or the team or whoever making the booking. So when it was two people 1-to-1, it was very little risk. Now there will be 5:1, so that's 6 people. So if me as a club wanted to go and book, just giving an example, at Western Park, do I have to produce a risk assessment that I have done something about it for the safety of our players and etc.?
Yeah, so there's a great example of West Ham, and we're just working through, and with Newham as well, with Carly and Newham Council around Plashet's nets, which are likely where there's free, and both of them are good examples because they're cage systems. So you have to be really wary in terms of how many players are actually in the back of those cages, which are for the nets. So Lucy and Carly, both in those boroughs, are looking at, they'll put in place their own risk mitigation and risk assessment for that site. And it might be they won't allow 6 people to be in a net. It might be a reduced numbers to say 4 because of the number of people standing around the back waiting to bowl and the social distancing that will be required in that area. So your facility that you're hiring from will have a risk assessment in place for that facility. What you will need to do as a coach, as any good coach will do, and as any practice, will produce a risk assessment for that session that you are running in terms alongside that. So you would adapt, you would fit in any requirements that the facility has put in place, and then you would put on top of that what's your own individual risk assessment that you're putting into your session as you would do. And that would include the normal safe hands procedures, the normal cricket equipment checks to make sure everything's in place, the normal size of cricket ball you're using to the normal length that the bowlers are bowling from. So all of that stuff would go into your normal risk assessment for any decent session. And the same as when you go into running small groups that might be on the outfield. Again, you fit into the facilities risk assessment and risk mitigation that they've put in place and add that to your own risk assessment that comes through. What I would suggest, and we obviously have a lot in East London, is those practice groups that want to turn up and practice and play, maybe go and access some of the NTPs that are in local parks, that they still need to do some kind of risk assessment for that session taking place. So they've just checked to make sure they've looked at all possible scenarios that could happen within that. And like Joe, I mentioned, things like if we are playing with a tape ball, how often do we replace the tape ball on that? How much do we clean that tape ball if it goes out to the fielders on the boundary? So just making sure that we've thought of all the scenarios and the cases, and also we must be patient still that some facilities won't open up because of the nature of where the pandemic is still sitting within that environment. And Newham is a great example. It's had the highest number of deaths in the country, and we just need to be careful and work alongside the local authority around reactivating as well, and just being patient with what that looks like as we go forward. So just what we recommend, it's a great opportunity. Just make sure we just reflect on the guidelines and the government guidelines, and we've just had to think about everything before we just sort of rush out and take place. So another example is that a number of clubs and facilities might not be ready this weekend. They might need to join with their committees and go through a process to make sure they're ready to set up with the new guidelines from next week. So don't expect some facilities to be totally ready for tonight or tomorrow morning, because they'll need a bit of time to make sure they've got their process in place as well.
So if I just wanted to just clarify, now it is 6 people can come and train together, and if it is colds, it can be 1 coach plus 5. If it is an adult also, it can be 1 coach plus 5, or it is 6 people coming together, or 6 children coming together, or 5 children coming together with one of the parents. Is it right?
You need to still stick to the ECB safe hand policies and safe hand guidance around that process. So your coach would have to be qualified if you're going to have that in that environment, and have their DBSs and their safeguarding in place if you're going to have that. But you're right, yes, it can be 5 in a group and a coach overseeing that, or if it's 6 adults who want to go for a net or play a single wicket activity on a middle, like as we see with football and other forms, that is allowed, again, as long as you meet the social meet thing. So things like that. Be careful. You can't really have two batters because the batters cross over. They go less than 2 meters. You can't have an umpire still because that's less than 2 meters from the bowlers. So all these things have to be thought about as you come through.
So one of the next question was that net environment, we do put two batsmen together so that they cross over. So you should not do that. All right.
No, you can't do that because the batter has to be down the end on their own, and you've got five bowlers or 4 bowlers. And again, like I say, be prepared that some facilities might not be up to 6. So, for example, West Ham Park is an example. They have both lane 1 and lane 3 open. You can't really have 10 people at the back of that net, I wouldn't think, under 2 meters, over 2 meters apart from each other. So you certainly can't have. Currently, you can't have 2 batters working in the net together because they'll go under the 2 meter restrictions.
Yeah. So there is another point is here that if the clubs with 2 nets, 2 lanes, so they can only use 1, and if there are 3, they can only use 2, and either side, the middle one will be empty.
Yeah. So again, it's a good example. West Ham Park. Currently, we're going to open 3, both lane 1 and lane 3. They might look at this guidance and just have, so Plashett Park, our understanding there with Newham, which is another 3 lane in a caged environment, are only going to open 1 net up because they can then have 6 people in there and use that 1 net from a social distancing point. But again, so just make sure you check with the facilities around what their risk assessment and their guidance are around their mitigation. But certainly, if you've got your own facilities, then you have to have a gap between nets and stuff. You can't have 2 nets running alongside next to each other. Because in period of battle, it could be 2 meters apart, less than 2 meters apart.
So in terms of, if I talk about in the center, all right, in the main pitch, pitch is empty and there are NTPs, all right, 6 people come and start playing cricket. They will probably maintain the social distancing and there might be 2 groups coming in. All right, I'll stay one side of the pitch. There is another say I'll stay one side of the other pitch. So 12 people with the social distancing, they wanted to play in the center, no other umpires. Can they do it?
Sorry, I was just trying. I would recommend at the moment that everyone stays away from the grass and grass pitches as much as possible because you can't activate them without any proper work, and they're going to do more damage to those facilities as we go through. If I get your question right, if you've got 2 groups turn up to a cricket ground, they would probably have to work on either side of the outfield to keep that social distancing apart. So you couldn't necessarily have two sides playing in the middle. So you can't go from that point. You can have a group of 6 and then another group of 6 working away a distance away from them, taking part and having an activity from that point. You couldn't work both groups in the middle.
Yeah. So if I ask Java now, Java, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Yeah. So let's say in your part, the 7 Kings, of course, it's open part, people are coming and there are NTPs and people can come and start playing cricket. What authority you have to make sure that they follow the government guidelines?
Well, obviously, we know that the people who can enforce the government guidelines is the police. So what we do is try and encourage people to obey the law, and where that's not happening, then obviously we refer onto our colleagues within the police. It's not something that we want to do. We want people to enjoy cricket and play. We don't want to refer people to the police. So in the first instance, we encourage people to adhere to the laws, remind them of what they can do and what they can't do. So I know that there are people playing almost every week, almost daily on NTP pitches. We do not want people to get into trouble. So we would encourage people, please, obey the rules. If we don't adhere to the rules, the government might change their mind and say, you know what, we're going to keep cricket on the restriction list. So we need to make sure we're following guidelines. If things do get out of hand, we will have to report people to the police, and it's not something that we want to do. We don't want people to get affected because of, playing cricket during lockdown and have something potentially on their record.
Dan, I think people are really eager to come back to recreation cricket. The people are watching here. There are cricketers, there are coaches, and there are administrators, and there are league organizers. So for them, what is the message this particular time based on the ECB guideline? Of course, they didn't say anything about how and when it's going to start.
Yeah, so the message is, as Jawa said there, look, we've all got we all got to work together still to make sure we are being safe and protecting our communities through this period. And that's the number one thing we have to do. We have to make sure as the government say, is around staying alert and being protective of our communities and supporting them, because there are still a number of vulnerable people and a lot of people that are still being impacted by this pandemic. From that point, the number one thing is let's just go back to enjoying playing cricket. At that point, let's not worry too much around our leagues and our competitions at this point. Let's work collectively to go right back to why we all picked up a bat and ball in the first place, and let's just work within the guidelines of just enjoying that process. As I mentioned, we're hoping next week, alongside with the ECB, that the roadmap will come out with what the next stages will look like. But that doesn't guarantee that they will take place, because we'll still need the government to agree that those processes can come in at whatever stage that may be, and that will still be a little while down the road in terms of what that might look like coming through. But we've got a really exciting time, haven't we? We've got this opportunity, if we're sensible and we work collectively, as we've shown in a number of ways, supporting our communities and through the cricket, that we can make this happen. We can sort of get people back playing the cricket, and it comes through that point. Alongside, it looks really promising that we might get some test cricket now as well on the back of that, with the West Indies hopefully coming over to play in July, and potentially in the rest of the summer we could have Pakistan here, and who knows, Australia and Ireland might still come as well. So there's some exciting news starting to come out. What we just got to make sure, and we've shown we can do, and again I mentioned it before with the together in the test stuff, is just make sure we're patient and we wait, and we stick to the guidelines which will protect our community, and then we'll come through from that point. We are going to run another webinar next Tuesday as well as Essex Cricket, which has been popular, on Tuesday at 6 o'clock around the guidelines. So again, if there's been any more updates, that will go out, and our fan will send that out to all clubs and leagues again, so we can pick up any more questions that have come over the weekend from groups. And we'll just constantly be here to support people. But as Jawa said, let's make sure we just, number one, remember our first duty is to protect our communities and to support people who have had some real challenging times through this period. And then from that, we stick to the guidelines, and we just pick up the enjoyment of playing cricket again, and coming through. And then if we do that, we can show the government we can stick to those guidelines and be trusted as a sport. Then hopefully, as they make further announcements around the easing of lockdown, it gives us a really good opportunity of what cricket might be able to provide still before the end of the summer.
Yeah, thank you, Jawa. If I can come back to you just to give your final thought. Of course, the people are eagerly waiting for the matches. You are managing number of cricket clubs you're involved with, and every day, of course, they're asking you the questions about the games, and of course, they still need to wait another couple of weeks to know about it.
Yeah, I would say, please, guys, just be patient. The facilities are starting to open. If you have the opportunity, pre-book your sessions, start your training, start getting fit, and hopefully, in line with government guidelines, if we can restart cricket from hopefully August, that still gives us a window. We're still looking to expand the Seven Kings Park cricket offer into September and even October if required. So we will work with local government and central government to enable cricket to take place as much as possible, but we need everyone to obey the rules and follow the rules. So if we can all work together, we can still have some part of a season this year. So let's all work together and try and enjoy cricket as much as we can.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Jawa, for joining us. I think there was a very good information and detailed information. The people who is watching it, they are watching. They got those information, and also this will be saved on the YouTube and Facebook so that people can go back and check what we were discussing today. Thank you again. Thank you for joining us, viewers. If I can just talk through a little bit about this ECB deadline. There is a nice flyer come up with this ECB. So this flyer will give you the bullet points, and this is saying everything what you need to do at this point of time. And as Dan was clearly mentioning, that this is just a guideline for the training, not for the game. So you need to make sure that you obey the rule, obey the government guidelines. And one of the key thing is hygienic. Make sure that you you clean your hands, you clean your equipment, and make sure you do it before and after each session. So for time being, so viewers, I think from us, this is the latest news about the cricket. It's at least some good news. The cricket is back, so that at least you can come with the 6 people, do the training session, maintaining the social distancing and following the ECB guidelines. So for time being, thank you very much, and join us soon again next time. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.